Welcome to our conference, International Conference on Turkish-Greek Relations for a Smooth Future. And me and Maria will moderate the overall conference though. Well, we will have two panels. So Maria?
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Nefeli Sarafoglu. I'm a journalist for Antenna Television in Greece, and I will be moderating this event that comes a week after the meeting of the Greek Prime Minister and the Turkish President in New York, where they confirmed the will to maintain a good atmosphere in bilateral relations. So, Murat?
The conference is comprised of two panels. We have selected two themes. The first one is about the emerging and shared concerns and prerequisites for both countries right after the wildfires, floods, or natural disaster we both as two countries experienced. And the second panel is about political matters, visions and means to manage the political incompatibilities.
Mm-hmm. So the aim today is to promote a positive agenda, inspire a constructive dialogue between the two countries that will pave the way for reaching a solution to the most controversial issues. So our esteemed speakers will make their point of view, and they will propose the most effective ways to reach common ground and ease political disputes. So Professor Talha Köse, the stage is yours for our first panel.
Thank you, Murat. Thank you, Maria. So it's a great honor and pleasure to be in this panel. So my name is Talha Köse. I'm the director of SETA Brussels office and professor of international relations at Istanbul University. So it's a great honor and pleasure to be part of this important and timely event. And I would like to thank Murat and Maria for organizing this symposium. So as an expert on conflict resolution and foreign policy, I have been examining this topic, Turkish-Greek relations and security and peace in the Aegean Sea and situation in the Eastern Mediterranean for a while. So it's a very complicated issue, I know that, and it has political, diplomatic, and legal aspects. And the overall picture has been quite bleak in the last several years in both Turkish-Greek relations and with regarding the Eastern Mediterranean. So the Turkish and Greek sides came to brink of a military confrontation in 2020, and there was a permanent tension between two neighbors. So the exchange of negative messages and menacing initiatives was a usual practice at that time. So the horrible earthquake that shook Turkey on February 6, 2023 was an important turning point in relations between two neighbors. So Athens demonstrated a significant solidarity after the earthquake, which we are grateful as Turkish people. And a new window of opportunity was opened for a positive agenda between two neighbors. So there is this new momentum which was accelerated after meeting of two leaders in NATO's Vilnius summit on July. And two leaders came to a meeting in UN General Assembly just a few days ago. So the meetings ended up generating positive messages from both sides, but it is at the moment very important to maintain this positive agenda, positive atmosphere with much more substantive efforts and substantive initiatives. So it is important to keep the hope spread and at the same time take significant concrete initiatives. So the purpose of this panel actually is to discuss these initiatives and some limitations of these initiatives. So we have four very distinguished experts from who are experts on Turkish-Greek relations. So we have Zuhal Mert Uzuner from Marmara University. She has been writing extensively on Turkish-Greek relations. We have Polina Lamsa, who is an expert on Turkish-Greek relations and also from Turkish-Greek Forum. We have Professor Yücel Acel from Ankara Yıldırım Beyazıt University and SETA, and he's also an expert of international maritime law. And Professor Kostas Ifantis from Pantheon University, he has written a lot on Turkish-Greek relations. We also read and follow his contributions. So in addition to their expertise, academic expertise in these topics, all the presenters, professors are at the same time contributors to track to diplomacy, and they contributed in practical efforts. So in this panel, what we're going to do is to discuss this new environment, what parties, both parties expect from this environment, and what may be possible limitations, as well as what do we see in the next 6 months to 2 years in Turkish-Greek relations, at the same time the Eastern Mediterranean context. So I'm going to give floor to Zuhal Mert Uzuner. So each presenter will have 8 to 10 minutes to give initial comments on this the same topic, and we will take some questions from the social media as well. So Zuhal Hocam, floor is yours. Thank you for all your contributions.
Thank you for organizing such a timely and important conference. It's always very important to be in contact and to discuss the topics, even they are really difficult to overcome for many of us. If we need to talk about the importance of this latest developments, because it's really important for all of us, for the people of this geography, it's an opportunity right now we have in front of us, because both countries have very strong governments, and they have now the strong support from their public. It's obvious from the results of the elections. This is somehow very critical issue for bilateral relations, because when we look at the issues, they are really difficult, and we need to manage somehow public opinion hesitations and the problems. So they are really deep-rooted issues, and that's why these governments needs to do so many things together with, of course, the academicians and public opinion leaders. But what we have in front of us really difficult, as I mentioned. By saying that, I can give some very important, let's say, the examples. The impediments we have in front of us, they are not easy to agree on that. For example, the Cyprus issue is a very important problem, and also another issue is the gray zones issue, and these are really difficult matters. And still, we can see the hesitation in both public opinion that arise from these two issues. But on the other side, we have so many things to discuss, to progress, because maybe for this stage of the time, we need to create a better atmosphere to start to discuss, to talk. Now we are at that stage to turn the contact, the dialogue into a kind of rapprochement. By saying that, I mean that there are many different opportunities in the world. When we look at the latest developments, discussions in United Nations General Assembly, we can see that the leaders referred to so many common issues. One of the most important issues is the rising interdependence in the world, especially from the liberal internationalist perspective. And also liberal economic perspective is critical, because when we remember the discussions and the explanations of the leaders in UN General Assembly, they refer to the rising connections, rising interconnections between the countries, and that creates different routes of trade and the contacts. So we are lucky to live in the Mediterranean. It is the center. It stays at the center of the earth, according to so many languages, because it means in different languages like this meaning come from these languages. So that's why we have an opportunity to create a bridge together, because in order to have an opportunity to be a strategic country, to be a strategic hub for the new transfer routes for energy resources or for trade routes, we need to have these connections. And when we look at the latest developments related with the rising Chinese trade capacity and the middle corridor and the new corridor came from the G20. So all are somehow underlining importance of our geography, our common geography. So that creates a very important motivation for both countries to progress on this positive dimension. So that is a very important issue. And another very important thing, as Murat explained at the beginning of our conference, the common threats. So we have an emergency cases, so humanitarian diplomacy is also a very important issue, and also environmental problems, sustainable development. These are all in our agenda, and we have to do something together. There is no another way to overcome these problems. So now we have an opportunity to turn our eyes to this positive side of this story, but it doesn't mean that this is the only side. There are many different sides of that the dialogue, but in order to have a progress, you have to start from somewhere. And also, if it is necessary to refer what we can do in the following months as a kind of progress in our relations. Customs union, for example, is a very important issue for Turkish perspective, because the customs union needs to be revised, and that revision is necessary for the inclusion of new issues. So this is very critical for Turkey, because Turkey is a very big country with its population and its trade capacity. So that is very important dimension for the benefit of all. Benefit of all our regional countries. Another important issue can be also the related with the visa liberalization, and as an EU country, Greece can create a kind of positive the support for Turkey to create a positive momentum, let's say the support to this the process. And also we always need to underline a very important dimension of the youth and contact between youth. We have Erasmus exchange programs, and I need to underline very important dimension at that point. Turkey now has the most Europeanized, the white collar people neighboring to EU region. So that must be a kind of very important the contact point for both countries, and it is the result of this Erasmus, and we need to have a kind of progress about these youth programs, exchange programs, so they are functioning very well. And of course the bilateral issues are the very the important, like the trade, I mean trade issues. I remember during the 2020 there were so many different discussions about again the delimitation problems. But again, in the same era, we see the starting of the ferry route in between Thessaloniki and Izmir, and it was always full of people. So that shows something very important. These people in both shores of the Aegean Sea wants to create the direct contact. So we need to hear that voice, and we need to support that the will of people. And of course there is need to eliminate so many hesitations existing in both countries, in both public opinion. And if we have time, I may continue later about this public opinion results and it's let's say the meanings for this positive momentum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zuhal Hocam. As you mentioned, there's a very significant public support for normalization, and we've seen that this is a very positive prospect for improving the ties. So you also mentioned the EU dimension, which may also play a very constructive role. Thank you for this brief introduction. I'm now going to turn to Polina Lamsa. So Polina, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me in this so timely conference. And I want to focus more on how we can move forward with the positive agenda. And I will start with a comment in Greek-Turkish relations, every time that tension reaches a red line and it becomes clear that further escalation may lead to confrontation, efforts are made to reverse the course for avoiding detrimental consequences for both countries. Let's think of what happened during the Imya-Kardak crisis, when the two countries were almost on the brink of a war, and there was such a big reaction for politicians, military, civil society from both countries, and so many people raised their voice calling for the need of a rapprochement. It is something we have discussed in depth in the Greek-Turkish Forum on many occasions, and therefore we cannot but welcome the decision of Prime Minister Mitsotakis and President Erdogan to inaugurate a new chapter on bilateral relations by promoting this idea of a positive agenda. Now, how can we successfully promote a positive agenda in Greek-Turkish relations? For this, it is useful to review past experiences and see how and if they can become relevant in today's environment. Indisputably, the rapprochement initiated by George Papandreou and Ismail Cem in 1999 managed to change profoundly bilateral relations and to secure for almost 2 decades peace and stability, although the key contentious issues between the two countries remained unsolved. How this was achieved? Certainly, political will was a key factor. Also, the creation of various consultation mechanisms between the two countries played a role. But most importantly, there was a paradigm shift that affected not only the elite, but also the two societies, generating concrete results. At formal level, the rapprochement gradually faded after 2012, but at societal level, it lasted much longer. And low politics bilateral agreements were instrumental on this. To mention few examples, during the rapprochement period, low politics agreements contributed to increase bilateral trade from $700 million in 1999 to $4 billion in 2018, and in 2020, bilateral trade increased by 17%. The agreements on tourism resulted in tripling the number of Greek tourists to Turkey from 2018 in 2000 to 616 in 2009. Despite the fact that Turkish tourists have to face the problem of visa restrictions, their number raised to 160,000 in 2007 and almost 1 million in 2017. Even today, despite what happened during the pandemic, we can witness a big flow of Turkish tourists, in particular to the North Aegean islands of Lesbos, Samos, Chios. Only during the last Kurban Bayram, more than 27,000 Turkish visitors traveled to these islands. We should not also forget the earthquake diplomacy that certainly highlighted the human dimension of cooperation, and the memories of what happened in 1999 have been engraved in the collective psyche. We witnessed a very spontaneous wave of solidarity from the Greek people following the recent earthquake in Turkey. The above examples show that the current efforts of the two governments to promote a positive agenda are not starting from scratch, and I think this is very important. They can rely on the foundations of the previous acquis, even if periods of tension followed. And this can give us hope that there is a real possibility to transform rapprochement into effective cooperation. So how can we move forward? The concept of positive agenda, as agreed by both sides, is enabling a step-by-step approach and a roadmap that, if successfully sustained, could pave the way for a discussion on key dividing issues as the continental shelf, the exclusive economic zones. Undoubtedly, for achieving progress, it is necessary to create a climate of trust. Building trust is a prerequisite for creating solid foundations for the improvement of relations. And how can we build trust? First of all, creating stable lines of communication at different levels, understanding the different perceptions and concerns of the two countries. In Greece, for instance, Greek-Turkish relations are at the top of the security and foreign policy agenda, while in Turkey, other issues may be more important. But it's crucial, for instance, to understand why Greece has a stronger perception of threat from Turkey, taking into account also parameters like difference in size and population. Pay attention to political rhetoric. Words matter and can poison bilateral relations and public perceptions. Pre-electoral periods often lead to inflammatory rhetoric, but now We are in a post-electoral period in both countries, and this facilitates avoiding unproductive stereotypes. Accept the reality of existing bilateral differences that unavoidably remain until substantial progress is made or until they become irrelevant. Agree on a range of cooperation agreements that can be effectively implemented, nurturing mutual trust and spirit of good faith. Understand the importance of the role of media and social media that can influence negatively or positively the atmosphere. Encourage cooperation between local authorities, universities, and civil society organizations, because a top-down approach only is not sufficient. Also, symbolic gestures like the support of Greece by Turkey in the UN and the support of Turkey by Greece in the International Maritime Organization are certainly constructive. If a climate of trust is successfully established, it is easier to advance further and at some point reduce military spending in favor of other investments very much needed in these times of crisis. Should we see rapprochement mainly as a way to avoid military confrontation? It's a valid argument, but also a negative incentive. A positive agenda needs also a shared vision of common interest, beneficial not only for the two countries, but also for the broader region. In the previous rapprochement period, cooperation of the two countries in a European context was an inspiring vision. Today, a lot of parameters may have changed, and the shared vision needs to include the need to collectively address a number of new challenges our broader region is facing. Addressing challenges beyond borders created by the consecutive crises, climate change, health crisis, financial crisis, energy crisis, population movements, require more, not less cooperation. The state of emergency wherein, for instance, the Mediterranean is predicted to be one of the most affected regions by climate change can be a key factor for promoting peace, stability, but also economic development in the East Med, despite the existing unresolved conflicts and differences. In this context, it is very positive that cooperation on climate change and illegal migration are at the top of the positive agenda discussions. But of course, the list of the already signed and proposed bilateral agreements is very long. From cooperation addressing natural disasters to cooperation on trade, business, tourism, education, culture, cultural heritage, shipbuilding, naval training, information and communication technology, waste management, without forgetting connectivity. It is a very extensive catalogue, and what is needed is prioritization, planning, and following up of implementation. Common security threats necessitate also cooperation. Both Greece and Turkey are NATO members, and both have security concerns regarding our broader and quite unstable region. The actual geopolitical instability may present opportunities for Turkey's foreign policy aspiration, but it also represents important new threats. A culture of non-respecting the inviolability of territorial integrity that we witness in our neighborhood and beyond, the development of sophisticated hybrid forms of warfare that surpass all the traditional defense mechanisms are valid reasons of concern. Last but not least, Turkey's European perspective remains an important sector to work on. There are a lot of issues that some were mentioned on the table, for example, customs unions, visa liberalization, PESCO, opening of some frozen accession chapters, etc. So, in conclusion, by following a roadmap that will include trust building, a common vision, avoidance of aggressive acts, CBMs, and concrete implementation of bilateral agreements, a leap forward can be made for the positive agenda to secure not only long-term stability and peace, but also fruitful, effective cooperation. The upcoming High-Level Cooperation Council in Thessaloniki is the next important step to follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Polina. Actually, you highlighted very concrete, very understandable steps how this positive agenda should be followed and substantiated. So thank you. It's a very nice presentation. Also highlighted the significance of public in crisis times. I mean, how constructive roles public can sometimes play, especially in times of escalation. So that's also a significant aspect of this crisis. So I'm now gonna give the floor to Professor Yücel Acar. So his expertise is also very important in understanding maritime issues, some of the border issues, some of the conflicting areas, but he also has some expertise on how to address those issues in a more constructive, peaceful way. So Yücel Hocam, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. I first of all would like to thank the organizers, Maria, Murat, and Talha Hoca, for this quite valuable panel. It's quite valuable. I'm well aware of this because this panel brings experts from two countries, from Greece and Turkey. That's not always happening. It's a very special occasion. So that's why it's really significant panel. Since, as Talha Hoca says, I'm mostly studying on international law and looking at the issues between two countries from the international law perspective, I will try to summarize my thoughts about how to address the issues or disputes between two countries from the legal perspective. We are actually witnessing a very mild period of relations between two countries, luckily after a very tense period of relations within a couple of years. But fortunately, since the early months, since the mid of this year, we are, actually having a very good period of relations. Diplomatic relations have started again, and it is quite possible that two leaders would meet again in Thessaloniki just to discuss the relations between two countries. That's going to be a quite special occasion. So, when we talk about the relations between two countries, unfortunately, we still have to talk about the disputes that should be settled. Without settling these disputes, we are actually not in a position to see a permanent good relations between two countries. It's very significant to raise the positive sides of both relations, but we should keep in mind that somehow we should address the disputed matters, and try to get these disputed matters to be solved. If we look at from the law aspect, there are actually two roles the international law plays in any given international dispute. The first one is that international law says to the parties of a dispute how to solve these issues, how to solve the disagreements. So that means we learn from international law what kind of means that the states could use to settle these issues. That's the first law the law plays in any given international dispute. The second one is that what principles to be applied when the states are settling these disputes in a given method. So that means international also tells the sides, both sides of the dispute, what kind of principles they should follow to settle the disagreements. As far as the issues, disputed matters between two countries are concerned, the fundamental legal problem we face is that both sides could not agree on the list of the disputes. It is so significant that it really prevents, even from the start, to the settlement of the disputes. So that's why the first issue is, what are the disputes between two countries, especially concerning the agency? That's quite significant. Let me start with this briefly. According to relevant rules of international law, it's not unique that one side argues that a kind of dispute does not exist between two sides. So quite usual, Greece argues that there are not many disputes, but only single dispute of continental shelf delimitation in the agency. So none of the other issues raised by Turkey as disputes actually is refused by Greece. So what legal rules say about that? We have some international decisions, court decisions to understand when really we could say that there is a dispute. I can mention a couple of international judgments. Starting in 1924, actually, there was a case which is called Mavromatis Palestine Concessions case, which was decided by Permanent Court of International Justice in 1924. And according to this definition, the court says that to say that there is a dispute, it must be shown that the claim of one party is positively opposed by the other side. It's quite simple, you know, a simple definition, also approved by many other international court decisions, that if there is a claim by one side, and if this claim is refused, positively refused by the other side, that means it's an international dispute. So that's why, you know, if one side, you know, says that our interests are conflicting and issue should be this way, as opposed to the other side's arguments. So it's, according to relevant rules of international law, there is a clearly international dispute between two sides. So that's the one matter that should be addressed in any case by two sides. I will actually emphasize a couple of more points on this later on. Another issue concerning the settlement of the issues is the means of settlement. Means of settlement is still a matter of discussion, I think. As far as I can see, it's a matter of discussion, because sometimes one side argues that a specific means of settlement should be used, but other side argues otherwise. According to the United Nations Charter, there is no preference in favor of a single settlement means. Article 2, paragraph 3 of the UN Charter says that parties should settle their disputes peacefully. That's the fundamental obligation for all states, including, of course, Greece and Turkey. So what kind of peaceful means? Article 33 of the Charter, you know, gives certain examples. Some of them are called the political means of settlement, like negotiation, mediation, conciliation. But also some others are legal in its nature, like arbitration and judicial means of settlement. That's another kind of settlement means. So are we going to apply political means, or are we going to apply legal means between two countries to settle these issues? As far as I can see, Greece says that there is one dispute, and let's take this to international court, as it happened in 1970s. I think still Greece argues that since there is one dispute, so let's take this to an international arbitration or an international court of justice. And this is refused by Turkey, not because Turkey is not willing to go to international court, but because Turkey clearly says that there are more disputes, and what are we going to do with these disputes? If we take the delimitation dispute to International Court of Justice, so what about the other issues? So what will we do? That's the fundamental question. That's why two parties seem to be in disagreement on selecting a specific means. But fortunately, we have witnessed that both sides managed to start negotiations on the bilateral issues. You know, starting in 2002, exploratory talks is a very good example, and they can really negotiate for a long time, even if we haven't seen a positive result yet. It shows that two states could again start such kind of a process of negotiation, addressing addressing the bilateral disputes. Since I have a very limited time, let me emphasize a couple of more points. Another point is that what are the principles, legal principles, that two countries should apply to the settlement of the bilateral issues? Many of the disputes between two countries concern the law of the sea, but also there are some other issues concerning the other principles of international law. I can only say on this point that even if they don't go to international court, it doesn't mean that they are not in a position not to apply the relevant rules of international law. When they are negotiating, of course, they are able to apply the relevant rules of international law. That's quite significant because even if they don't go to international court and apply the international law rules by themselves, it is quite possible that they will be able to persuade the public opinion quite easily because they are applying international law rules. And also the result would be a permanent settlement because we can assume that by applying the relevant rules of international, they would be in a position to produce more equitable settlements than that would be able to persist for a long time without any further disagreement. So the last point, prospect. You know, we have a very good, we are in a very good point at the moment, and they have, both countries, Greece and Turkey, started a new process of negotiations. As the Foreign Minister of Turkey emphasized that we opened a new chapter in the relations. So I can just say that let's see if there would be a permanent process of negotiations. Hopefully they would be able to start this again, and we could look forward to see a real process of settlement. We could just hope this at the moment, and there is a great chance for this. Thank you, Talha Hocam.
Thank you very much, Yücel Hocam. So Paulina mentioned how this political process, political means can be substantiated from both public and political sides and actors. And you mentioned that even in the legal arena, if the parties may decide, there are significant opportunities that they can address their problems. There are good examples, and of course, there is a need for political will for this initiative, but still, if there's a political will, I think the legal aspects can also produce some solutions to the major issues. So that is also very important. So now I'm going to go to Professor Kostas Ifantis. So he has also been evaluating this process and also has been writing on bilateral relations for a while. So Professor Ifantis, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, dear Talha. And let me also thank the organizers for both setting up today's event, one of many similar to follow, I sincerely hope, and for the invitation to be part of this impressive lineup of, first of all, friends. Okay, and I salute Zuhal and Yüksel and Paulina, and it's always a great opportunity to engage with them, and I think it is essential to talk. It is imperative to engage and to contribute to a process that just started, to a process that it is by nature very fragile, to a process nevertheless that can, one hopes, can ameliorate suspicion, that can help dealing with the profound lack of mutual trust, and also provide at the end of the day a source of ideas. I'm not going to repeat what has already been said. I'm not going to pretend that this time is easier than other times that a rapprochement process was initiated and finally collapsed in another crisis. As a matter of fact, it is very hard to come up with new ideas. You know, allow me more personal tone here. Sometimes I feel that it is very difficult to generate meaningful concepts at all. There is a very strong perception, a very strong set of perceptions, very sort of deeply rooted belief, if I may, that Turkish-Greek relations, the relationship will never be free of prejudice, of mistrust, of the perception of threats, of warmongering discourse, because it is a relationship that has been developed throughout the centuries as something that touches upon sovereignty, something that, of course, it's about geopolitics, competitive geopolitics, something that it is about culture, and all this burdened by not very pretty history. And I have been part of this kind of exercises for the most part of my academic life. I don't lose hope, but I'm cautious, because it is easy to develop a sense of, now I might sound melodramatic, of despair, that everything we do is futile, so a sense of futility. So let's hope that this time is different. I have two comments. One of a thematic nature, a thematic thought, if you like, a more general comment, and a more specific comment that relates to a soul-searching need in Athens, in Greece in general, and I'm pretty sure that it applies to the Turkish side as well. And of course, I'm not ready to go down the path of formulating proposals, or at least yet. Now, the thematic comment or the thematic thought is that I feel we are at a point that attempting to untie the knot in the Greek-Turkish crisis-ridden state of affairs requires more than ever to sort of be able to look at the issue or at the issues from pretty much every angle. And that is, Paulina has referred to it, Zuhal has referred to it, climate crisis, not change, clean energy needs, public health, pandemic was just yesterday, and another one might be around the corner, and of course, trade, economics, and security. So I think that at this juncture of global developments, we need to form a much more integrated picture of what the two countries are doing, or how that fits into what's happening in our region and in the world. So global is local and local is global. How it relates to a much more collective, regional, global set of interests. It is what I'm referring to, actually. It's an attempt, which is very hard, but it is an attempt at changing the framework of dealing with dealing with Greek-Turkish problems. It is an attempt to change the paradigm, but it is very hard to arrive at. But I think everything is in front of our eyes. I'm not optimistic, but we need to put to develop a mindset of compromise within a new framework, not a bilateral one, but a much more regional and global. In that way, a compromise might be less difficult arrive at. It might be less difficult to transform the relationship from its traditional, conflictual, crisis-prone understanding and perception and nature for some to something different. Somehow we need to make the delimitation issue or issues somehow less relevant. We need a much more global, strategic in outlook, wider in geographical as well as functional terms. You know, those of you who know me, you know that I'm a hardcore realist, but realism at the end of the day is about avoiding conflict. And if we put our mind on that, then we can start talking about how to transform the bilateral interaction. Now, my second comment stems from what I've just said, okay, which I understand is a more general, wishful thinking like statement, but that's what I can come up now. And as I said, my second comment is very specific to Greece, but it also applies to Turkey by any measure, at least in my mind. You know, in Athens, at all levels, at the political personnel level, at the level of military on foreign policy diplomacies, at the level of media and opinion making and opinion leading, at the level of civil society, at the level of, at the end of the day, at the level of the average citizen, we must be aiming at how can I put it, at plugging in to a discourse that has the potential to destabilize our own beliefs and certainties. There is a question that we need to address in Athens. And in Ankara, I'm pretty sure about that. If we fail or if we are unwilling to do it, this time will be a repetition of past attempts. As we are starting to talk to each other, political dialogue, positive agenda, the CBMs process, but the fundamental question is, and this is what I'm asking myself, is what is the strategic success for Greece with Turkey? What does that look like? What is the vision of success at the end of the road? If this time we are much wiser in pursuing. What is a successful conclusion of a peaceful resolution process? What are the markers of progress? You know, it's an almost impossible question for reasons that are easy to imagine. I don't have a soundbite answer to this question myself, or I'm not that arrogant to pretend that I have. At least in public, not yet anyway. My hope is that, that in the coming months we can continue to contribute to fleshing that out. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Ifantis. Yes, you highlighted a very significant point. I mean, yes, we should be optimistic, yet we should also be prepared for a much more substantial agenda. And past has taught us that, you know, there may be some ups and downs, and this time it is more significant for cooperation. So in the past, we know that the common trait, shared threats during the, fascist threats in 1930s and the Soviet threat in 1950s, 60s brought these two countries close. And as you mentioned, there are much more global scale threats right now. We experience these disasters, these, environmental change and climate change. These are also very significant challenges, like the migration, which also makes push parties in the direction of further cooperation. I think that is very significant. So cooperation not always happen for positive or constructive reasons. Sometimes threats, sometimes the shared challenges bring parties together. And as you mentioned, there is all needs, necessities for further cooperation under these circumstances. So thanks a lot for this, initial comments. We right now have 20 minutes for comments and questions. So I will raise at least one question to each speaker with the same order. So I will start with Zuhal Hocam. So Zuhal Hocam, what is the expectation of Turkish public from this process? As you mentioned, yes, I mean, the Turkish-Greek tension may be priority agenda for Greeks, but for Turkey, we have many other issues, pressing issues, security issues. However, this issue definitely is significant. So what is expected from Turkish public, Turkish side, and what may be the possible constructive, positive scenario in the next 6 months to 2 years?
I will start with a sentence which is very important for understanding what we can do together. We are always in search of perfect, and it is the biggest enemy of the good one. There is no perfect path in front of us. We will have always problems, but the biggest problem, maybe biggest the impediment, the problem in front of us is expecting a very smooth future. Nothing will be smooth in politics, just like the other neighbors and other actors in international relations. But I see that in Greek-Turkish relations, there's always a kind of emotional dimension. It is somehow fed by the education and the other the public opinion creation mechanisms. And that makes much more like drama for both communities. So this is the most important problem. And when I look at this, the Turkish public opinion, I see, for example, the issue of the U.S. bases in Aegean Sea. It seems like a kind of the source of the threat against Turkish cities or Turkish people. So that seems a little bit, let's say, the difficult issue to understand from Turkish ordinary people's perspective. And when you look at these discussions, which are always much more promoting negative idea about the other, referring that too much, but especially in TV shows. That's very critical point. I know, as the experts of IR, we can put some meanings to these happenings, but for an ordinary person, from a very, let's say, the militaristic perspective, all these things can be understood from very negative perspective. So this is very important. Another issue, I always refer this, the ties in between the universities and projects. When I look at the issue from a little bit higher education level, I mean the group of people, there are so many common projects, and most of them are referring, when I look at this, the epistemic communities who are in touch each other in between these two communities. There is a much wider perspective. When we look at the international developments and the progress, these developments are related with Caucasia until the Europe, and sometimes it can enlarge a much wider geography. And these happenings promote more the common benefits. So when I look at the public opinion discussions, I see also this is somehow interesting point from Turkish perspective, because there is an opportunity there. So we can benefit from that altogether by accepting existence of all these actors. I want to give an example to that. when I look at some writings and discussions in Greek academia and the discussions, there is a term Southeastern Mediterranean. So there is no South. Let's say the Eastern Mediterranean. When you look at these discussions, this is very important. It's very important to refer the southern part and what is existing in the northern part of Eastern Mediterranean. So this is so important to have also a kind of inclusive perspective. There is no another way other than accepting each other as the neighbors. And always I say, just imagine the existence of another neighbor next to you, maybe a much favorable one. So just think the same crisis and cases according to that criteria. So we see that we need to change this mindset. The problem is deriving from the mindset. We have so many different opportunities in front of us because the world is changing and we do not have let's say any more space for denying the existence of these opportunities to cooperate, but it's not automatic. We had another one like the hydrocarbon energies. When we first heard the existence of hydrocarbons, everybody was so opportunistic for solution, for the promotion of this cooperation, but it didn't happen so automatic. So what is the reason? That's why we need to start to contact more and decrease the fear, the hesitation, the conspiracy theories and discussions in public more and more, and it needs to have more contact, maybe more bottom-up approach we need to contact for overcoming these problems.
Thank you very much, Zuhal Hocam. As you mentioned, emotions are sometimes impediment to peace. We know that both countries can have very strong emotions, but at the same time, during the disasters, during the difficult times, the same emotions may turn into a positive, stimulant for constructive engagement. So this is very difficult. But at the rational level, probably, if we put the relations at a much more rational level, I think there may be much more sustainable, kind of much more predictable level of engagement. So, and we know that that aspect is very, actually, there may be very fruitful elements of cooperation in much more rational exchange area. So I'm not saying that the emotions should be completely controlled, but again, it can go in the both ways. But the rational cooperation can be managed in a much more constructive way, and there are significant opportunities there. So I'm gonna now turn to Polina. So Polina, you mentioned about the confidence building measures and possible steps towards these achievements. So what kind of roles do you think can the EU, US, and other third parties play in both supporting this process? And do you think the third parties' roles can be useful, or do you think it should be only the initiative of these two neighbors? So what is your thought on this?
I think that the two countries can decide if and how third parties can help. I can understand that, of course, the EU and the US certainly wish to have stability, peace, cooperation in the broader region. We should start from that. But I think that the main actors are Greece and Turkey, and it's up to them to find the way, because I think that nobody knows us better than we know ourselves. And I think that if we do our homework, then we can find how and if third parties can help us to achieve more progress. That's what I believe.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. So, Yücel Hocam, in the literature on conflict resolution, so some people think that during the resolution of the conflicts, some people should start with the easiest way. Some others argue that it's a total package. You have to consider it as an agenda as a whole. So what do you think? Where should the parties start dealing with these legal issues? Or, you know, should they take them as a holistic approach, or should they start with the easier way? So what do you think should be the roadmap in dealing with these legal issues?
Yeah, Talha Hocam, it's quite a significant point, this one, because, you know, there is no obligation from international law in favor of a specific means of settlement. It's up to the parties to choose as far as it's peaceful means. Mm-hmm. But how the parties are going to choose actually depends on the specific circumstances of that dispute or disputes. If we talk about the Aegean Sea especially, the issues are so interrelated, it's almost impossible to separate one from the others. If we look at the airspace dispute, it's fundamentally relates to the maritime disputes. If we talk about the, you know, the sovereignty issues about rocks, which is completely related to the maritime issues again. If we look at the, you know, territorial waters issue, it is again related to continental shelf delimitation. That's why, you know, since it's not possible to separate them from each other, I think there is no other way to get these disputes together in a process of negotiation. It's not usual that two sides are taking all of these issues together with an international court. It would be completely, you know, difficult from the very beginning to formalize the questions to be asked to the court. And also, I am sure it's going to take a lot of time for an international court to handle all these significant issues. I think the easiest way for the Aegean issues is to get them negotiated in a process of negotiation between two sides. Let me add this as well. I think I can disagree with Paulina a little bit about the involvement of the other countries. I can understand that Greece feels itself a bit relatively smaller country against Turkey. That's why, you know, I can understand a smaller country tries to get the other powers alongside with itself as against another relatively bigger country. But I think if at first sight, it seems to be in favor of Greece, but I think it's not. Because whenever you involve the major powers, they are not actually looking regionally, they are looking globally and from their own interests. So that's why it is actually making a little bit more difficult for Greece and Turkey to settle the issues. As far as both countries are separating them from the interests of the global powers, I think it would be easier, not inevitably, you know, very easy, but anyway, it would be much easier in my perception.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So this is definitely a thought that needs to be taken into account as planning. So Professor Ifantis, right now, I mean, if we check the situation, we definitely have a other issue. So the Ukrainian war, we don't exactly know where it will end and what will be the consequences of this war, and also the ongoing tensions in the region, including the Syria issue, which is not resolved yet, and some other significant challenges. So what do you think? Do you think this, you know, the ongoing tension in Ukraine, an unexpected situation about this, can this have an impact on improving or, you know, bringing the relations in a more tense way? So what is your thought on this, you know, new security challenges? Because in 1990s, we didn't have this kind of issue. We didn't have this kind of actually security issue for Europe. Right now, for European security, again, we can also mention the emerging crisis in Kosovo. So we have emerging issues which are concerning for Europe. So what do you think these challenges, do you think this can play a role in cooperation of two countries, or do you think they are irrelevant?
Well, you know, as well as I do, as well as everybody else in this panel, know that it is, you can only hope that although the global and regional situation is in a state of crisis, one can only hope that this might prove conducive into bringing the two sides closer to each other. Because, as I said before, there is a global situation, global state of play that Greek-Turkish relations cannot be separated from. It is certainly, at the end of the day, it has to do with national preferences, with national choices and strategies. So, if, for example, as a discourse that I don't subscribe to, you know, Turkey is choosing a different path in the next years, in the following years, away from the West and NATO, then this will definitely affect, most probably in a negative way. But right now, most of us, and I don't mean as individuals, but as societies, as nations, as states, we share the same anxiety about the future. So there is violence, there is the potential of more violence, and someone thinks that this could be a very strong motivation to put aside at least the differences and work together towards facing off these threats. Now, you can argue that the de-escalation, the tension-free months that we've been living since the destruction, the earthquake destruction in February, it is not because of the earthquake. The earthquake was, if you like, a tipping point. But the real issue is the upheaval in Europe, the upheaval in Ukraine, and of course, the very fluid, the very geopolitically fragile situation in the eastern and southern borders of Turkey. So I think it has already played a role in sort of making both governments much more amenable to a new attempt towards rapprochement. So in that one, I can be less pessimistic about the future. It is not a good thing, that we need an imbroglio like the one in Ukraine or in Syria in order to get together, or that we need an earthquake to initiate a rapprochement. But this is the tragedy of the Greek-Turkish relationship.
Thank you very much, Professor Ifantis. As you mentioned, in addition to the global threats that will affect both countries, we now have the problem of return of the conventional conflicts. So, the state-to-state conflicts. And I think this necessitates a readjustments in the relationship. I don't think Turkey has, any second thought on NATO. I think there is a very strongly committed. So this new environment, So this new environment may push two countries, two neighbors to work together, because the impacts of these conventional threats is also threatening both countries. So thank you very much. I mean, it was a very good exchange of ideas. I think, you know, we are still in the beginning of this rapprochement, the process. But as far as I see, both countries have thinkers, academics who pay significant attention and put ideas to substantiate this process, which is very optimistic. So it is right now in the responsibility of the public as well as the politicians to move forward with this new, fresh ideas and explore new venues for engagement and resolution. I know that it will be difficult. I know that in the past there may be some hurdles, but I think there are also very promising areas, very promising outcomes at the end of this process. So we, as the scholars, are very supportive of this process. But with your thoughts and with your ideas, this was an excellent panel. And I would like to thank also again for the planners of this panel. Thank you very much for listening to us.